Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Are you awake? If you are awake and you're here, a miracle happened. You got up.
Yes. Yay.
And it's no small thing that you're up. I am grateful for your presence. I am grateful for your attention. I'm grateful for your participation, and always grateful for the fact that you give me, Giovanni, the speakers of the Daily Huddle, an opportunity to do what we love to do, which is to just attempt. We're not saying that we are doing it, but we're attempting to leave you with something different in your life. So we say how you start the day gives you the rest of the day. And we intend for you to start the day on a high note. Good morning, Stan Anderson, Master Anderson.
Good morning, Sherelle. Good morning, family. Good morning.
Good morning. And we say the way you start the day gives you the rest of the day. And maybe, just maybe, the way you live today may give you the rest of your life. So be mindful of today. And welcome to today. Welcome to now. I've got a few questions for you guys. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir.
Where are you, sir?
I'm right here in this place where I'm supposed to be.
Right here. Yes. And you could attempt to be another place right now, but you couldn't.
I couldn't do it.
You are right here. Good morning, Michael Harris. What time is it, my friend?
Oh, gosh. The time is now. Right.
It is right now. It is right now. And Jacqueline, how
Good
are
morning.
you?
I am how I say I am. And today I am amazing.
You are indeed amazing. You say it, you are it. And there's a connection to being here right now, saying how you are and having the power of your word give you your life. Well, the power of my word messes with me sometimes. I say this morning that I am funny, but you be the judge of that after I say this joke. So there's this magician who's walking down the street. And then guess what?
What?
He turned into a store.
What?
Keep your day job, Sorrel.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I said, I say I'm funny, but you be the judge of that. I am delighted this
I
morning.
don't know if I quite got that one. Would you say that one?
Well, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
I haven't seen Michelle Cleveland in a long time, but Michelle has this way of going. Michelle goes, you know what? I'll get this joke by Sunday. But here's the deal. Magician takes things and make them turn into other things.
That's right.
So this magician was walking down the street and turned into a store. Now, anytime you have to explain a joke,
Yeah, exactly.
it's a bummer. I mean, that there's nothing funny about that.
Oh man.
Good morning, Robin. It's so great to see you, my friend.
Ben.
It's good to be seen, sir. Thank
Welcome to the Daily Huddle.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. How are you, my friend? How are you?
Maybe 75%, sir.
Good deal.
Really?
Good deal. Well, welcome to today's conversation, everyone. Welcome, CC. I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Jane Bishop. Jane has been on the Daily Huddle before and waited way too long to come back. Jane, I missed you.
Yeah, missed being here. It's great to be back.
Oh, my God.
In the studio.
Now, Jane poses this question, gang. How can practicing permission granted boost your EQ power? Now, Jane is the founder and CEO of Take the Next Step, and she helps entrepreneurs, business owners, and organizations up-level their leadership presence skills. Jane is a former athletic coach and teacher at the collegiate level, former corporate leader, and brings a range of skills, knowledge, and expertise to her current role as entrepreneur. Jane's my friend, your friend, and a significant contributor to the Daily Huddle. Jane, I'm so delighted to have you here this morning. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sorrel. And it is awesome to be welcomed back and to return to great to be in the Zoom studio with this illustrious group. And for those who may be participating on Facebook Live, we welcome you as well. So I'm curious just a little bit about what prompted you to join today, other than you like to be in the Daily Huddle, which is great. So as you're thinking about that, capture whatever surfaces to mind, because one of the things in our discussion time together before we have the official Q&A is to capture little nuggets that may resonate with you. Now, it could be something that prompts you want to think further. It could be a nugget that is new to you. It could be something you've known all along and say, oh boy, I sure needed reminded of that. So my objective is to make us all ponder, to stop, pause, and think. So with that question, let me just ask you to capture something on your notes this morning. What is it today that would be helpful for your day to have permission granted to do? And just write that down. You could be a word, a phrase, a picture. It could be anything from permission to play, permission to leave your office early, whatever that happens to be. And just write that down. And with that capturing, now just kind of note to the side, what is the barrier to granting myself permission to do this? Or however you want to word it. What is the barrier, or what prevents me from granting myself permission to do this? Now, as we think about our EQ power, permission granted, how all that plays in, and today, Friday's being focused on leadership, here are some thoughts that I want to offer to you, and then we'll see what shows up with any of your questions. First of all, I want to set the context and remind us all about EQ, emotional intelligence. The definition that I most often like to work from is the one by Dr. Travis Branberry and Gene Greaves. If you're not familiar with their book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, I highly recommend it. But their definition is your ability to recognize and understand your emotions and your skill at using, notice that, and your skill at using this awareness to manage yourself and your relationship with others. Now, as leaders, whether we are leaders by title or leaders by influence, this is key. This is very important about understanding what emotional intelligence is. But why is emotional intelligence important? Again, they go on to say the communication, emotional intelligence is the communication between our emotional and our rational brains. It's that physical source of emotional intelligence. You see, everything that we have ever seen, experienced, smelled, aromas, whatever, physically enters us in the base of the brain and travels all the way through our head. And really, we want to get to that frontal cortex so that we can make a rational intelligence decision. Now, if you want to dive into that deeper, then we need to have an offline conversation. But that's the point of emotions is the connection between our emotional and rational brains, and it's that physical source of emotional intelligence. So in essence, it's our information center. Our emotions are intended to inform us. So think about what you're experiencing right now. What is your emotion informing you of? And capture that. It gives us a perspective of the world around us. Now, the world could be your office, whatever setting you're in. If you're on Facebook Live or looking at the on-demand version of our conversation this morning, what are your emotions at this moment informing you with? Give yourself that information, because emotions have got to help us in our decision-making process. So if you go back just for a moment to what you captured about what would be helpful for you to have permission to do, permission granted, and what's keeping you from that, what's the emotion tied in with that? What's the connection? Capture that. Emotions, again, tell us something about the world that we may not have accurately perceived in another way, and there's something to interpret and use rather than to ignore. And let me say that again. Emotions are something that we are to interpret and use rather than to ignore or try to control. When you are triggered with frustration, for instance, or you're triggered with anger, or you're triggered with a short fuse, there is something beneath that. So you can go through the layers of what is at the root of triggering that. That's your information source. Then you know how to respond rather than react. You know, Marcus Aurelius, I read this quote recently, the Roman philosopher. He said, "You have power over your mind, not on outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." So when we realize that we have this power, when we give ourselves permission to have this power over our mind, then we can do something different. A couple of other things, just briefly about emotional intelligence and then the application to permission granted. Emotional intelligence is the foundation of many critical skills, and it impacts everything we do. Related to your leadership, for example, how is your leadership influenced by your emotional intelligence health? How is your leadership influenced by your emotional intelligence health? Because if you're not familiar with it, and I don't want to assume, the 4 skill areas of emotional intelligence are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So they're kind of just 4 things that we key off of. When we have strong self-awareness, it impacts how effective we are at social awareness, which helps us with our self-management and leads us to more effective relationship management. Now, I want to just transition to some current events. I don't know if any of you have been keeping up or watching the Olympics. I happen to really enjoy the Summer Olympics and try to watch either live or replay as much as I possibly can. And of course, you probably know that one of the big stories of Olympics has been the decision that Simone Biles made to withdraw from much of the competition. And our purpose here is not to analyze her decision, but I want to extract 2 or 3 quotes that I read from different articles and then make an application for us to ponder. Jason Atten wrote in an Inc.com article 2 or 3 things. Of course, according to Biles, those expectations played a role. Talk about expecting what everybody expected her to do, the greatest of all time. This Olympic Games, I wanted it to be for myself when I came in, and I felt like I was still doing it for other people. That's what she said after the team finals. Then she said, I didn't want to do something silly out there and get injured. So there's that injured physical that we think about. The important thing, she said, her teammates saw that even the greatest is still human, and that's okay. Permission granted. It's okay. It's okay to always not be at your very best. The important thing is what you do when that happens. In a CNN article written by Chris Kaliza, he made the observation that the reaction to her decision suggests that we simply aren't where we need to be when it comes to understanding mental illness. Now, he was focusing on the mental illness aspect, which is very, as we all know, is huge. In fact, Johns Hopkins says an estimated 26% of Americans ages 18 and older, about 1 in 4 adults, suffers from a diagnosable mental disorder in a given year. Yet it's interesting to me, let me just say a side note, that our culture allows us to talk about a plethora of issues and platforms, and yet mental illness and other areas that people perceive that we are not doing our best is still not acceptable conversation. Okay, now back to the regularly scheduled program. That's all I'll say about that. Here's the thing. This is what she said in that he quoted in that last article. Simone Biles, we also have to focus on ourselves because at the end of the day, we're humans too. We have to protect our mind and our body rather than just go out there and do what the world wants us to do. Therefore, permission granted can boost our EQ power when we are willing to have enough self-awareness to manage ourselves so that our social awareness is key. As in Simone Biles' case, she knew that physically, that her mental situation was causing physical issues, the twisties, as you heard, and that was not safe. Yet as leaders, how often do we get in our own twisties, to use that analogy, and feel like we have to go on no matter what? So again, comes back to our emotional intelligence. If we extend permission granted to others, what keeps us from extending it to ourselves? I'll say that again. We issue permission granted to others. What keeps it from extending it to ourselves? I find a lot of times in my coaching clients that they are extending responsibility for themselves to somebody else. And once that permission granted comes up in our coaching conversation, everything relaxes. It's like, yes, somebody told me that I have permission to do this. So as leaders, if we are leading and influencing others, it must flow out of our self-leadership, the core of who we are first, to be as effective as it can be. In the Simone Biles context, she had a very healthy self-awareness. Now, I've not been at that level. I can't pretend to read her mind, but from an outsider looking in, she had enormous healthy self-awareness that gave her the courage to give herself permission to step back. Huge EQ power boost, huge. Her self-awareness influenced her self-management, knowing that socially she would probably have an outcry, which she did, negative, but thankfully there was a lot of positive support. That she could be brutal, yet her relationship management was elevated as she exuded trust in her teammates. She was still concerned about Team USA, but she was healthy enough with her own self-awareness and courageous enough to step back and say, I give myself permission to pull out because I cannot perform at this level. So I posed this question. Well, let me make a statement, then I'll pose the last question. When we apply permission granted, we can release that energy and reallocate it to something that's much more effective in that time and space. So the question I'll leave with you at this moment, and then we'll have some dialogue. how could practicing permission granted boost your EQ power? And just to seed your thoughts as we move into the Q&A, maybe it's permission granted to connect with yourself. Maybe it's permission granted to trust yourself. Maybe it's permission granted to influence yourself. You influence others. How about influencing yourself? Maybe it's permission granted to take a break. Maybe it's permission granted to be confused or to create structure or not to have all the answers or to create boundaries or to stay aligned with your core or not implement every new process that comes across our feed in social media or our email inbox. Whatever it is for you at this time and in this space, permission to fill in the blank, and then sit back and say, permission granted. So let's pause at that point and see what that might have surfaced in terms of questions, thoughts, insights, disagreement, permission granted to speak.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. And you mentioned the word practice at the end.
Yeah.
And I want to make this short comment and then open it up for questions. I see the practice this way. To actually grant myself permission to be, do, have anything, I must first ask the question, what am I
Yes.
not giving myself permission to be, do, have right now?
Yes.
So there's the centering effect that
Yes.
practicing brings.
Yes.
So I would sit and ask myself, what am I not giving myself permission to be? And then give myself permission. And I did discover something this morning. I work like the Dickens, Jane. I never give myself permission to do anything less than that.
Right.
And so what I wrote when you asked the question at the beginning is, I'd give myself the permission to do nothing on an afternoon, nothing. And,
Right.
and then it terrified me. Because in that moment, I confronted the emotion that was there and the thought that was there that makes it imperative for me to work myself to the bones.
Yes. Yes.
I'm afraid that if I don't do that, I will be seen as a failure and what I'm up to will fail.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. That is powerful insights, Sorrel. And then have the courage to give yourself permission anyway.
Yeah. So I'm going to do that tomorrow afternoon.
Okay. then my encouragement to you is, all right, when at the end of that do nothing time, then send me a quick text or email and say, Jane, I did it.
I did it. I did it. Well, thank you, Jane.
Yeah. Do we have any other, that's a great insight. Any other questions or comments or
Questions,
insights?
comments. The floor is yours, people.
I'll just throw out there real quick. I've been through about 3 weeks of very, very questionable health over the last 3 weeks. And when you said that this morning, I was like, permission to feel horrible, permission
Yeah.
to want to feel better, permission to, and when as you spoke, I kind of narrowed it down to permission to be human. I function on such a high level, and my
Yes.
expectations of myself are so great that a lot of what I've been going through the last 3 weeks has just psychologically and mentally just whipped my ass.
Yes.
I mean, it is just crushing me because I just can't do what I have to do.
Yes.
I cannot achieve the level that I'm used to achieving. I can't focus and function on anything for the period of time I need to accomplish it. And I see that there's a lot of things that I'm not doing that need to be done. And I just had to stop and go, you know what? The world didn't stop in the last 3 weeks. It's not up to you to hold it on your shoulders. And it's okay to be human.
Yes.
And allow everything that's going on in the world, and then your little mess too, to be what it is.
Yes.
And just function through it and get through it. And being here this morning was even a part of it. I wasn't even going to try and engage and get back into what I'm doing until Monday because I'm just still feel, miserable. but I said, I have to get something done. And I'm glad I did, because this opened up my eyes to say, you know what, it's okay. Just go ahead, be human, and take the time to do what you got to do. And I'm reassessing a lot of things right now. So this was a very eye-opening experience. Thank you, Jane.
That's great. Awesome, Robin. Kudos to you.
Thank you,
Anyone
Robin.
else? Sorrel,
Who else?
do we have any Facebook comments that we need to address?
I'm monitoring Facebook and a couple of comments, no questions. Peter Augustus finds the conversation introspective, and your good friends, Marie Fertoni and Deborah Foaz, are on Facebook watching you and listening to you.
Okay. Good morning, my friends. Robin, to that point, I want to just reinforce what you said with one quick personal example. I've chosen, it's not a have to, I have chosen to do that with the own space and season where I am with my life, because I'm the primary caregiver with my mother who lives with dementia. So I have given myself permission to put certain things in the parking lot. You know, I am unable to do evening commitments, so I don't even think about it. It's in the parking lot. This is an example of reallocating energy. I get a request, whether it's pleasure or work related, and occasionally I'll do something work related, but not on a regular basis. And I'd say I'm unable to do anything in the evenings right now. Permission granted. So I want to just use my own personal example to applaud you for that recognition, and it can serve you very well as you continue to practice that. As with anybody who chooses to practice, even Sorrel, who chooses to do nothing for an afternoon.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Jane. Rose has a question. That will be the last one. Go ahead, Rose.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rose.
I just came in from a walk, so I don't consider myself camera ready. But anyway.
Permission granted.
Permission granted.
Perfect. So Jane, I'm so glad you're on this morning. Thank you so much for this conversation. I just want to applaud you and ask you maybe even to come again real soon and take this conversation to the next level, especially at this point in time. My supposition is that every single one of us is now somewhere on the scale of dealing with some kind of mental issue. Every single one of us.
Yes.
Nobody's at set point zero anymore. The world has given us a place on the scale. And I think we need to change our entire conversation about mental wellness. I think mental wellness and physical wellness need to be considered as a single and well-being issue with human beings from this point forward. So I appreciate everything that you've talked about. And I would love for you to come again and keep having that conversation with us and be a clanging cymbal and a loud drum for really changing the way we look at, deal with, honor and respect mental well-being in this country. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you, Rose. And I would be delighted to come again. And I would also be delighted if there's a group of you that want to get together either early in the morning, either before the daily huddle or after, or around lunchtime. You know, we can do a special 1 hour webinar specifically around that subject, you know, if helpful. We would just need to, you know, coordinate that a little bit. Sorrel, I do have a summer special right now with my emotional intelligence assessment. It's only $99 and you get a 60-minute consultation with me on that. So if that's of interest to anyone individually, you can email me and get the information of how to purchase it and, you know, set up that appointment. So I do think, Rose, that is a huge conversation that the door is wide open right now. Let's jump on it and leverage it.
Perfect. Awesome. Jane, it's always, the 30 minutes always goes by so quickly.
I know.
Right? So here we are. Jacqueline, goodbye. And so Jane, your last comment before we take off.
Okay. My last comment again is when we apply permission granted, we release that energy that is probably not being used very wisely and reallocate it to another area of our life where we can be much more effective and healthy. So permission granted to do what you need to do to be effective.
Thank you, Jane. You have the permission to come back as often as you like. And to all of you watching us on
Yes.
Facebook and here in the Daily Huddle studio, you have the permission and grant yourself the permission to love, laugh, eat sensibly, stress less, give and sleep, and move your body like there's no tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Have an awesome weekend,
Yes.
everyone.
Have
Until
a great
then.
weekend, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Val, CC. Bye.
Good day, CC.